Is dating in prison sexy? That's the question today, which is actually going to send us down the rabbit hole. But somebody may ask, what kind of prison? Are we talking about the prison for souls or a physical prison that's usually dominated by one sex? And the answer to that question will be answered very shortly. Welcome to today's early morning, early bird recording. It is 6:39 in the morning. And so this is kind of a new thing for me to fire up the generator here off the grid in Southern Colorado, bring you something that I've been thinking about for over an hour, have a number of different pages. So the idea is to help you identify the spiritual prison that we're in and the parallels between the physical prison behavior and the psychology of the people out here, and some of the rules of thumb that we need to look for regarding escape plans, and the importance of understanding that even if we shack up with people in the physical prison, we can't carry them out of the tunnel. And we also are in a society that says that if we're waking up to the fact that we're in a prison, that on day one of waking up to the fact that we're in a prison, that we should have the solution to how to get out of the prison. And so some of the prison psychology of our so-called normie world isn't really sane at all. And so we have references, of course, that we can make, like Plato and the allegory of the cave, and trying to help the people understand the world outside the cave being a real complication. And so those of us that are alive today, and I'm coming to you from the year 2018, I've been involved in this about 12 years on YouTube, but I was also doing cable access for a number of different years. When you're the contrarian, either in a physical local environment, and you're dealing with philosophical ideas that go beyond politics, that are actually ancient ideas that go back thousands of years, that's a path in which someone needs to be willing to walk that road alone. MGTOW, by the way, is a very limited term. That's not the topic of our video, but there's purpose why men and women at some point in their life walk a spiritual road alone. It's because they're on a mission. And that's what's important, not these little, hashtags and movements of the modern fallen age, but the real reason why people go within and tap into that inner power and that inner wisdom, which comes from refined knowledge. They tap into that inner strength, and that's where that wisdom comes from. It creates that strength, that field of energy. And so I do believe that if we raise our energy and frequency to a certain point, that it's like our birthright, that we have the ability, more so in our human form than a disincarnate spirit, especially those that have offed themselves. I think the evil of this world wants us to off ourselves, and when we feel like we don't want to live in this world anymore, then we need to work even harder as souls in physical form, right? If someone feels that they want to, in their experience, well, they should, within their life experience, create a new life for themselves. Figure out how to change their life. Figure out how to tap into their own success, which to me isn't about money. It's about being on your path, doing what it is and discovering what it is that you were born to do. And we do have purpose. There's a movie, starts with the word escape, and it's features Sylvester Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I'm not a big fan of recent action movies. In fact, it takes a lot for me to sit down and watch a movie. But I did watch that, and so there were almost things from the movie that you can interpret as almost like a secret teaching or a little bit of gnosis. For example, he wakes up in a high-tech prison that's crossing the ocean, that's run by a private corporation, and it's manned by androids without feelings. But the main question posed by Stallone in the first scene with the doctor was, where am I? And he asked that multiple times. The answer doesn't come either right away to the audience, either while the question was posed. Stallone was talking to the doctor about the doctor's own, it was a book for doctors that featured a little section about their creed regarding morality and compassion and fairness to a patient. He was waking the doctor up with his own truth and knowledge and his own rule book, that which he had forgotten at the moment. And he was speaking to his inner consciousness. You know how it's supposed to be. Why are you doing this? Why aren't you telling me the truth? Where am I? So some of the parallels that I'm going to bring up with regards to this, and if you begin to notice this within yourself, then you have the ability to go beyond that. So you take a look at the commissary, the type of garbage that they're eating in prison, and you look at it's actually the same kind of food of the so-called regular society. We also have a lot of people trapped in the service industrial complex, and look at the types of jobs that people are put in when they go into prison. Food service is one of them, and working in the kitchen next to being a janitor. So the idea of working in prison just to survive, even if you don't want to, and some of those rules being upheld in the so-called real world. Now also think about factories in Asia, where they're basically making very little for themselves, and it's basically just to survive, to basically buy the basics, and in some cases they can't afford the basics. So certain third world countries, factory slave labor, and the types of conditions, the types of sociopathic managers, and also the amount of sexual assaults towards female inmates, as well as female staff at some of these factories overseas, as well as things that have happened within our own country. So links between literally the foreman and someone that's an actual prison guard being a parallel archonic consciousness, and them willing to do things that are immoral and even against their own code of conduct, so they can have their own slice of rulership, their own slice of that archonic consciousness. So we'll see micromanagers in the corporate world, as well as prison guards, doing certain things to certain people. One of them is gang leaders, for example, targeting independent people for not joining their gang. We can also look at like the modern world of politics and the war of words, and we have similar type of gang behavior. We've talked about this from the left and the right, and people that are independent kind of being bullied by both the left and the right, or being taunted by both the left and right, in the same way that you might imagine a prisoner on his first day, and he's walking in without a gang, and he's being given his clothing, he's being given his towel, he's being given his soap, and all these different taunts are coming at that independent person that's running without a gang, to order to see if they could be broken or not, and if they will just join these groups to stop the assault. There's another movie, Blood In, Blood Out, which I've watched many, many times. And as he's getting beat down or being held over the balcony by the Mexican mafia group, the white supremacist group is saying, as they're laughing, see, that wouldn't happen if you were up here with daddy. Now, on the topic of prostitution being normalized in today's society, and I mean by males and females. Now, also go back and think, if we were to open up, and the cat's making its appearance, if we were to open up, for example, the prisons, and for them to be co-ed prisons, and give them the option of leaving the prisons, right? But leave the goodies inside the prison. So the Netflix, the candy bars, the private space for them to fornicate, dress it up with some flowers, throw in some plastic flowers, throw in some pictures, straight off the shelf at Target, something like that. Throw in some nice bed sheets, give them access to clean laundry. A lot of people wouldn't leave. And then over time, don't call it a prison. Call an apartment complex. But leaving the cameras, that's all for somebody's safety. Maybe they can manufacture some events within the prison so people think that they need the cameras to be safe at all times. And so this is very much the modern day and age, and how they've used crime, terrorism, and other things to build a giant prison, where people ultimately police not only their own behavior, but who they associate with. And in the end, it's about dominating how they think, dominating how people think, through the lifestyle of being institutionalized. So people will lie to themselves about reality itself, out of a fear of being persecuted. It was also watching Ghostbusters again. There's that introductory theme to where Peter Venkman is doing the test of ESP with those two individuals, and that one guy keeps getting it right, and then he keeps buzzing him. And so he's being immoral. But the name of his study was negative enforcement for positive ESP behavior. Now think about that. We also live in a world where there is negative enforcement for positive behavior, whether we're talking about having certain abilities or being a better person. And we have We have positive enforcement. Think about the Barbie doll being rewarded by some sort of a sugar daddy, talking like she's a little girl. So we have, and think about the girl that is decent, that has morality, that ends up being used, unfortunately, and having unfortunate things happen to her, maybe because she wasn't born a 10. So we have negative things that happen to good people. And so we're in a world where things are backwards. And to me, and again, we go from the micro of the physical prison to the themes of the macro, which is escaping the prison, to evolving beyond the prison. And that's the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal is to be ejected by the prison warden of this world. To be ejected to where we're no longer in the prison. We're no longer vibrating at prison level. We did our time and we changed from within. We found freedom from within. And it's like a hand holding one of those plastic toy balls from Kmart underwater, letting it go and watching it pop up. And that's how we should see ourselves, popping out of this soul prison by creating enough of that soul voltage more powerful than that archonic hand that's holding us down. Understand, there's going to be people that are used against us to keep us in the prison, to kind of get us into a fight. So maybe we're on like a certain sentencing where it's like if that guy gets in a fight, he gets another 10 years. There could be certain ways in which people try to bait us on YouTube or in the real world in some way to responding to that which they're doing to us. And so there are real world applications to the concept of turning the cheek, which we may not think about. What if sometimes we're tested? And what if also the prison warden consciousness isn't something that's just victimizing us as souls contained in this reality or field, but is a part of the true Godhead consciousness? Again, this is old school, ancient spirituality, that the idea of the demiurge is under the true creator, or Satan to God, if you will, that things are being allowed in order to test and refine the souls. It's like we're in a world where we're being tested by the devil of this world that seems to exist for a reason. But we also have information. We have knowledge. We have warning signs. So if we're going through this world and we're paying attention to the signs, the road signs of life, then we should be able to get ourselves out of a situation where we're stuck. Now we're running out of time, so we'll cover some of the other things that are here. But physical prison, real world prison, it's the psychology, no real control over environment. So people may have environmental movements. They're not really in control of stopping what's happening with the geoengineering. They're not. They'd like to be in control of that. Most people are in denial of that. And they're in the slave prison propaganda consciousness of, oh, you think you got it all figured out? Why are you a prison like me? Why are you another prisoner like me? Oh, you're another human like me. You're not in the mainstream media. You're another YouTuber like me. You're another da-da-da. It's competition mode. And see, that's part of that same thing. The other thing, though, is once people do realize that they are in a prison, there is camaraderie over that fact. And so on some levels, there's more camaraderie in a prison that one may experience than just live in a so-called regular world. They may be actual more real-world allies in an actual prison than someone may actually experience in the so-called real world that's outside the so-called physical prison, because they have a common plight that binds them as allies. Whereas in the outdoor prison world, everything is designed to keep the prisoners fighting each other. Whereas 10 years ago, there was maybe some awareness that the system was corrupt. And now there's like this type of internal, the left wings point at the right wing wings point at the left wing. Very few are looking at the prison warden consciousness that's controlling the left and the right and the media talking points. They're fighting each other, and especially anyone that might talk about the Panopticon dystopia that's controlling them all. So again, micro, doing real time. Macro, doing time on Earth, or the parallel. So doing real time to being free, to doing time on Earth, to evolving beyond the matrix. Prison factory workers. We talk about, someone in Asia basically working just to survive, otherwise consequences, and psychopathic foremans acting just like prison guards. So you can't carry your significant other out of prison. Is dating in prison sexy? Well, if you have an escape route, your significant other needs to be able to defend themselves, be aware, try to be quiet as you're going up the tunnel. You can't carry them all the way. You can only carry yourself, and good luck to yourself escaping the matrix. That's its own. So we're all here as individual souls, even if we have families and significant others. And people also, desire others. And also, people desire fame and fortune. We desire on a primitive tribal level for our tribal figures or people around us, and that could be other people online, to approve of what we do and support it. But are we working harder to impress the inmates, or are we working harder to escape the matrix? They can't be one and the same. You can't impress your friends in the asylum while trying to escape the asylum. You can't help them escape the asylum. You can maybe try to explain the blueprints that you're looking at and try to help them along the way. I'm trying to help you along the way as I try to evolve beyond this reality. But there is a micro and a macro way of looking at this. Many good books have been written in prison, and that's a quote from Hunter S. Thompson from Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. So again, we're going to talk about the Truman Show as we close. Imagine the prison without bars, right? And slowly appearing to be the modern day society in slow motion. Start to imagine something from the Truman Show. So within the Truman Show, there are a number of Gnostic themes and ideas, things that we can take from that particular movie and apply to our real world. So let's talk about the Truman waking up to his reality. And at one point he wakes up to it, and then he sees obstacles in his path that manifest. And so he realizes that he must strategize and not be so open about his plans to escape his matrix. The other thing that we see at the end is that the architect of his matrix says that he has a choice, but he uses deception anyways, right? Shocking those around the architect that's doing things that could possibly kill Truman. But he's doing it anyways, in addition to saying that Truman has a choice. It's more like Truman has to exercise his true ability to override those challenges that in some cases will be physical and could threaten his life. The significant other in Truman's life, in Truman's little prison, was assigned to him by the prison warden to distract him and to keep tabs on if he was remembering who he was. His best friend was assigned to him as well. Trauma was created in Truman's life, in the Truman Show, to limit his sense of possibility and to create a fear of water that would limit his ability to literally travel and change his reality. Metaphor, metaphor, metaphor. Truman discovers clues in the form of a broken light. The voice of God is projected. He's not actually seeing the architect. He's hearing what appears to be something like the voice of the creator. I created you, Truman. Truman, don't go. I created you. Also on par with the Wizard of Oz, right? The projected power. So we have basically a description of an archon or deceiver, or to purposely experience waking up to the deceiver in command. So like there's a purpose to waking up. We may go through periods of pain and hardship and unfortunate circumstances on the prison yard. And when we have a reality where independents are targeted, and when we have a reality where the evil wants to change the good souls to be like it, like the archons want to give us their mind, it's important to understand that there are certain things that get thrown at us in this soul prison in which we're contained to see if we're going to react a certain way to stoop down to someone's prison-like level, vibration, or frequency. And it's important to understand that that's what it is. It's an energy. It's a way of life. Also, people that are stuck in fight or flight. Now, we also have the situation of the warden herself, using inmates against inmates, special rewards, privileges. Now, in the so-called real world, I believe that people that are involved in deception could be rewarded with wealth or attention or the energy that they serve when they go out and they do evil. But when you marry yourself to such archonic consciousness, it's not good overall. Now, say that person stops serving their master. Okay, that's when that person gets punished. And getting out isn't easy once you really start serving the dark side. Some former slaves have hits out on them. And these are just some notes that I wrote really quick a few hours ago when I woke up at 4:30. Some souls that are out there have hits on them. And you could be marked in a way, and there could be ways in which normal protection that's available to most of us humans, like a certain level of protection is there. Just like there's a certain level of protection around our country. If not, can you imagine? Imagine if we didn't have certain shields to protect us from certain things and certain weapons that are out there, as it is with spirituality. So when the hand of God is removed, or we remove our own internal God-given armor through immoral actions, yeah, I believe you could just be given a certain level of armor and protection, and then you can also just chip away at it by being really cruel to others. And that's what some people are doing. But you can serve that system for a while, decades, maybe even a lifetime. But at the end of that lifetime, or at the end of the period in which that person's being used, then comes the time to pay the piper. There's also that movie Devil's Advocate. It has a lot of themes within itself as well that a lot of people may just think, oh, that's just a movie. So again, prison propaganda, we want to identify, because this is a solution. It's not knowing the full escape routes, but we need to stop identifying with prison behavior, with the mentality of the prisoner. And that's the first step in a recovery program. So some of the prison propaganda, one has to know the way out of the prison the moment they wake up to being in prison. That's ridiculous. But imagine a reality where that's like a catchphrase. And so we have our own catchphrases and memes that basically have no wisdom. There are memes and there are things with wisdom, there are ancient teachings, and then there's a lot of the modern day babbly-goo, which has confused a lot of people. Here's another false way of thinking. By the end of the day, the new apprentice will have built the house. So again, in the real world, if we talk about the problem, we're expected to have the ultimate solution. And this is more of that prison psychology where someone's saying, well, you're an inmate just like me. What is it that you think that you know? And things of that nature. Or somebody could be so institutionalized to hate themselves that when someone else talks about escaping the matrix or escaping the prison, for example, they may be in denial at a certain point that they're even in a prison. They may have developed a new personality to cope with the fact that they're in prison. They may be on a certain level of psychotropic drugs. They may or may not be in a dress. They may or may not be someone else's bitch. But they very well be in a disassociated sense of reality to where they're no longer able to cope with the reality. It's like PTSD, like with the reality of people that have gone to war, and they may not be able to cope with the realities of what that war was about. Just like the person in the prison, there's going to be that malfunctioning. And so people like us that want to wake people up to the fact that we're in this soul prison and we need to be concerned with escaping. Some people are going to be stuck in the prison psychology and they're going to be against what we're doing. And so we need to be aware of that and not surprised when it comes. Also, prison psychology, do unto others worse, at least, what they do to us. When the golden rule is do unto others as we would have them do unto us. And I think that the sooner that our society collectively gets the golden rule down and ditches the prison psychology, that's the moment when our society can begin to heal in some ways. Our society isn't healing, it's getting sicker as a result of the prison psychology dominating the so-called open air prison. The world, of course, in which people think that they are free. Until the next video, I'm Alex Ansary, reminding you the path to the ultimate truth and place of power still lies within. We're now at a battery power, and we got the whole video done just in time.